Thank you so much for being here today, Nicole. I am so excited. There are so many great things we are going to talk about today. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love your podcast and was super excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. So I always like to share, how I get connected and how we get connected. And I find that the universe is always, somehow connecting people one way or another. So I would love to hear your way of how we got connected, and we can share that with the listeners for sure.
Yeah, so I think you were actually on one of our top podcasts that we were reaching out to. And
Yes.
I think we had a conversation about being a guest as like a pre-screening, but then we kind of connected on multiple levels and wound up
Hmm.
thinking as just as moms and then also being able to work together. So it was kind of
Absolutely.
a double connection, which was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time Paige, I think it was, reached out to me and she was connecting me with moms, and I was like, who is this woman and how are they finding me and why is this is so perfect. And then to jump on a call with you and then go, wait a minute, I think I need you in my life.
Exactly. And I think we were having the call while I was in carpool. So it really fit the
Yes,
demographic
we
of what
were.
we're all been there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So cool. So I did share a little bit about who you are and what you're up to, but if you wanted to just let us know where you're at right now today and where you're at in the world of motherhood and entrepreneurship, I'd love to hear that from you as well.
Yeah. Well, it's really funny because I was just having a conversation with somebody this morning about kind of the different seasons of motherhood and how mine is very different than where she particularly is at. But I would say
Mm,
right now I've got almost high schoolers. I got 15 and a 13-year-old. So I'm in the throes of that, which is new challenges. But it's
mm-hmm,
also a lot of openings to different things, especially professionally.
mm-hmm.
So I've gone from, watching babies and making sure everyone is fed and safe to now having 8 hours a day available to pursue other things. So
Wow.
I'm actually at a very content stage, both professionally and personally, being able to do a lot more things than I have been in years past. And I'm not wishing away my children's youth because I know I only have a few more years till they're out of the house, but seeing what that is transition is going to look like.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. So I would love to hear from you. What does redefining motherhood mean for you, and how has that played out in your journey and to where you're at now?
Yeah. So I would say for me, I feel like, I'm going to be 40 this year and I had my kids early. And when I was working previously, I think there was this element, this would have been like early 2000s of you're either a mom or you're working. And it was very
Mm,
hard to have both of those. And
mm-hmm,
I felt very pressured that not that I couldn't have children, but it was definitely going to look different. And
mm-hmm.
to the point that I actually worked for 2 years. My daughter was 2, who was the youngest, and my employer did not know that I even had children. I worked
Really?
remotely. I had C-sections. I scheduled a week vacation, and I was back to work.
Wow.
And finally, it got to the point where it was like, okay, I cannot keep up a full-time job and 2 children under 2, kind of thing. So that changed. But for me, in that, it redefined is that realizing that you can't do it all, you just can't. And family and children were always going to be my first priority. So this was a time in my life that motherhood and my professional career, motherhood became the swing. And that's what I needed
Mm,
to focus on. And I was able to be creative and find different, avenues to work professionally, but staying content in my motherhood and knowing that eventually other opportunities would come is kind of that redefinition for me. And that's really what I
mm,
encourage in the girls that come work for us too, is saying, it's just not your time right now for this. It will
mm.
happen, that will come, but right now, the reality is you have a nursing baby and a 2-year-old, you can't work 50 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Having those discussions with them and having walked through it personally helps me so much of understanding where everyone is at and trying to encourage them.
Hmm. So yeah, there's a lot in there. I love that.
So I guess my
um,
short answer would be learning to be content and that redefinition of motherhood. it's so easy to be looking at what I should be doing, what I could be doing on both sides of the fence, and just really focusing on being content.
I like that. So I'm assuming at some point you decided to create this business that you're in now. How old were your children?
Let's see. So that's been 4 years ago. So they were around 8 and 10-ish. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. And tell us why you believe in this mission. I think it's a mission because I think that what you are connected to doing and creating space for moms, like I feel like you've really niched yourself in the sense of like having the availability for moms to show up and do what they want to do and also do it on their own time. So can you expand that for our listeners to hear more about?
Well, I think a passion can come easy when you've walked in those shoes, right? And like, you know exactly what that feels like. For us, that looked like we were living on one income in the state of California, which was impossible. We were beyond broke. And I was always trying to find ways that I could still contribute to the family, even if it was just vacation money, right? Like it was just enough money for us to make it to Disneyland every year. And so I started reaching out to business owners and, hey, I could do this from home for you, or I could do, I was a receptionist for a driving school remotely. And I remember being at parks and all my friends knew if my phone rang, take my kids, be quiet, I've got to answer this kind of thing. Cool. So it sort of evolved naturally. And then flash forward, to starting the business, I realized there was also this disconnect of entrepreneurs and business owners that needed help, but couldn't necessarily bring in a full-time employee. And they weren't to that stage, whether the work wasn't there or financial, whatever. And so I thought, okay, well, I know this pool of people that really want to work. And maybe it's only 5 hours a week, maybe it's 20 hours a week, depending on their stage, again, of motherhood. But somehow there has to be a way to connect those two. And so that's really kind of how Bosun came to be.
I love all of that.
Yeah,
I love all of it.
It's so fun and so rewarding, and seeing, in fact, I was just talking to a girl that started with us 4 years ago, and she has actually gone on to start her own company. She's in the legal field. And I was just talking to her this morning, and it's like, you're just so proud, because I've been with her since she had an infant, and now her child's 4 and she's able to do this. And we love that. It's so fulfilling.
I really do love that. And I think when we were talking for the podcast specifically, when I heard that part, I was like, oh, yes, that mission and that intention behind it is served so much of my heart. And then also hearing how you've structured everything, it just feels like it just feels all good all around to know. I remember being in the early stages of motherhood too, and just kind of going, my plan was to return back at 3 months because I'm an entrepreneur. So I was like, my own maternity leave budget will get me to 3 months, and then, get back in. And then, just things have a way of working out. At the time, it did not work out that way, and I definitely resisted it, but just kind of kept the momentum. And I didn't return back until like maybe September. So yeah, it was a year. It was a year that I went back. But I remember thinking throughout that time, like, what is it that I could do, and how can I return back? And just really trusting that that was the season that I was in, and then that was okay. And taking all of those external pressures off. So there's so many different ways of looking at what you're talking about, right? So as a mom, becoming a mom and transitioning back in, and then also from a business perspective, being able to engage moms back into a space that they can do both. Because I know that you had said we can't have it all, but I do believe we can have all of what we desire. I do believe that, right? You desired to be present as a mom, and you left, I'm assuming, a career that was like not serving that. And so you did get yourself in a position where you could have it all of what you desired, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it just has to be, like you said, redefined, and that I also say you can't serve two masters. You cannot give 100% to a career and 100% to children and family. There's just something has to give. Now, you can make what that 100% looks like for you, whether that's scaling down your hours, whether that's bringing in maybe some childcare so that your time can be more focused on them. But the reality is You can't do all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
your all, like you said, has to be defined. Otherwise,
Yes.
you are
Yes.
so depleted. And,
Yeah.
and something you said too earlier, I wanted to say, because I did feel this way, is I think there is a sense, even if you do step away after like being a new mother, there is a mourning of what you lost. I mean, there's no way, especially if you are entrepreneur driven and you have that in you. I don't know if you know much about the Enneagram, but I'm an 8, which is like the worst to be as a woman.
Okay. I don't know much about it, but I know of it.
You know that one, of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's like most men are 8. That's what I would say. So it is especially hard for me to pump the brakes and to not go full throttle into anything. And so there was that mourning period of like, I have built up this career. My first pregnancy was not planned at all. It was a total shock. And so it was like being hit by a ton of bricks and just knowing I have to give that up and I'm going to have to mourn it and I'm not going to be there and I'm going to see the company succeeding and going on without me. And that's sad and it's okay,
It's totally okay. Yeah. But, that's the part I will say, if I were to segment through what we're sharing right now, makes me emotional because I saw a post earlier. It's like we talk so much about baby and entering, but we never talk about postpartum, which is what I believe also my mission in this podcast is to talk about postpartum, the realities of postpartum. That as much as we are all experiencing something very unique, it is also very different. But I would say that mourning or that grief period that almost has this like negative label to it is actually a true process that is going to happen. And it doesn't take away from the love that we have for this new chapter, but it absolutely does require conversations and connections with people who can hold that space, which I'm really grateful for, because it was like, on one hand, I wanted it, and I had it, and it was here. And then all of a sudden I was like, but what about everything else that's no longer here? Like, how do I comprehend that when I'm like 7 days postpartum, had a C-section, like nothing feels normal at all. And not that no one talked about it, but it's not a normal conversation to have, whether that be from not wanting to scare new moms or not even understanding it ourselves. And I think there's a real need for us to have the real kind of conversations when it comes to postpartum and also entrepreneurship and career-driven women. I think having this, let me backpedal. You're either your values in what you do before becoming a mother and your values as a mother are very similar, right? Like we want it, we want both. And then when it happens, it's like, okay, so then how do I do this? How do I redefine what it means for me to have both or to have it all? So I really appreciate you sharing that, because stopping the brakes is probably one of the hardest things to do ever.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, especially as we're seeing the trend towards women working longer in the workforce before they have children, that's going to be even harder. I mean, I had my first child at 24. I can't imagine if I had been 15 years into my career and then had to step away. So I think that's going to need to be an even bigger conversation. I think there's this guilt that you've just been given this best gift in the whole world of this child, right? And somehow inside of you, you're like, but I really like that too, And it does not negate, like you said, one way or the other. But the reality is the life that you knew is gone. It will never be that again. Even if you do go back to the workforce, things are different, right? You're getting calls from school. You got sick kids. Like you will never have truly that same life again. And so I think there is that mourning process for that you get through and go, okay, well, what does this look like now? Like you said.
Yeah. I think being able to have that conversation to just literally say, okay, so it's not going to be that, like moving through that process and then being able to come into it and say, okay, this is what I'm redefining. And I think that all of us are naturally doing that, but we don't know that we're doing it. Like, I don't think we know that we're like consciously going, okay, well, now I'm going to redefine it and do it in a place of like, I feel good about it and I feel aligned, because I think there's the pressure from society and there's the negative emotions, like you said, about the guilt. And I think my mission is to create a space where we're just doing it without all of the pressure or the expectations of feeling like we have to do it a certain way, or to justify it, even that, right? To justify why we're doing what we're doing. I'm over
Yeah.
that part.
I mean, I don't know if you feel this way, but I do find, even though I do have good friendships with people, especially through my church family, there's a level of, unless you're in these shoes, you don't know what that feeling is. To have this entrepreneurial spirit, to run a business, to also be a mother. And so there's some feeling that I'm always on this island of misfit toys, where you're kind of in mom land, but you're also in professional land, and you don't really belong in either one. As far as what people are looking at you like, right? And so you are having to be everything to everyone, and great, I'm mom, I'm showing up at school and brownies, and then guess what? I'm running back to the office and I'm giving a presentation to the CEO, and that's a lot to juggle, mentally especially.
Totally. And I think that's what redefining motherhood really does stand for, is understanding the capacity and the mental load behind motherhood, as well as entrepreneurship, because it doesn't look like the 9 to 5. It is not. And I think that's, for me, that was the, before I even was even in a place to even think about children, for me, that was what kind of excited me about it, like the choice, the ability to choose when I would do things. It doesn't mean it's any easier. It just means there's just this feeling inside me that makes me feel like I have choice over what's going on. And if I ever don't feel like them, I definitely call my coach and work through that.
Well, and that's what I would say is, like, people need to find a mentor, whether it's someone who's gone through it, someone who's currently in it, that can just even obviously just vent to, because on either side of the coin, if they're not in those shoes, it's very hard for them to understand what you're doing. I mean, I literally just went through this last night. I was out at a girls' night, and, I try to make time for those things, and it was a crazy day, and Liz, my business partner, was out of town, and I left my phone in the car, and I came home to just a complete nuclear disaster with work. And I had to step away from that and shift gears. And of course, they're looking at you like, get off your phone, and you just feel guilt over there. And there's just no winning, you feel like sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yes, I totally understand that. So what would you say is, through the last 4 years of entrepreneurship and where you're at now, what would you say has been your guiding light? What has been moving you forward? What's your mission and intentions with what you're creating?
Yeah, well, with the business focus, I think it's really, my passion is definitely giving women opportunities. I also love just seeing, we will get women that have not worked in 10 plus years, right? And their confidence is at zero. They're just, totally like, there's no way, it's been so long. And I'm always like, it's like riding a bike. You can do this, like it will come back. And so I love seeing that growth, not only in their roles with clients, but their confidence level. A lot of them were riding out through children getting older and then being able to take on more. And so, I would love to be able to supply opportunities for women all over and in all different fields, and expand, the client base that we're even supporting. And, on the flip side for clients, like, it's so thrilling to see clients grow. I mean, we actually just started with an attorney day one. First was our first client. And he has since opened his own firm. It's based in Manhattan, is just, going crazy, skyrocketing well. He's just, and writing that out and seeing that side and having them come to us and saying, okay, we need another paralegal. We need to bring in this. And like, so you're kind of like in this just exciting cheerleader section on both sides. And I'm not rose-colored dresses. There's problems too, but you are just able to like see that growth and be a part of it. And it just, I don't know, it makes your heart swell for both sides.
Yes. It's just like expansion on all levels. It reminds me of one of the mentors that I do follow along with, Melanie and Lair. And she says, like part of her whole mission is like leading. She says, I lead myself, I lead, you lead, for us. I'm sure I'm getting it wrong, but I love the whole feeling. It's like, I'm choosing this and you're going to choose this, and together we're moving forward. And I've always labeled it as like that ripple effect, like when I stand in this space and I work with one person, I know that the work that we're doing is going to directly impact the 10 closest people in their world, which will then impact 10 other people's. And it's like, it's just the ripple effect of that is the feel good, why, like just the why. So I love it.
Yeah. And I will tell you, like, and this goes for anything, I think, as entrepreneurs, when your passion is your driving force instead of money, it will relay tenfold. I mean,
yeah.
if money was ever our passion or focus, we would not be as successful as we are right now. But even when we're talking to the girls that work with us, it's like they will get off the phone with me and be like, I don't know how, but you make me feel that I could literally fly to Mars this afternoon if I could. And like just instilling that confidence and like, you can do this and we're going to work through this together. And that was a big piece of our company that I felt was very different than other virtual assistant companies, is that they became just sort of a matchmaker and here you go. And hope you guys work it out. And we really wanted to be there for them. I wanted to know, I mean, literally today I was posting, we have a team Instagram. We have 3 now quarantine babies on our team. So, you know, like I want to know you're expecting babies, when your birthdays are. I want to be there when things are falling apart. We need to bring other team members in to help. Like we want to be that support group because we all need it as moms. And if you're out there working on an island, it is not going to last long. Like you are going to feel isolated and defeated and it just overwhelmed.
Oh, I just love it all. Like I'm like soaking in all of the greatness, because it is like, it's women supporting women. I'm sure you work with men as well, but in terms of like just that idea that a mom who is working or is at home and is ready to take on more, it's just a lot of the conversations I have with moms is like just wanting to do something outside of motherhood, whether it's for 1 hour a week or for 3 hours. And this is like such a beautiful dynamic because they don't, I'm just going to say the VAs, right, don't have to own all of the stuff that comes with the business. And they get to, I don't know if you've read the book, I'm currently reading it right now. Let's see. Okay, yeah, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. So I'm not too far in, but I'm loving it so much. And he talks about like the zone of excellence and the zone of genius. And I really feel, just from my experience and who I'm working with, shout out to Jennifer, I really feel like she is in her zone of genius. And how incredible. Like I think as entrepreneurs, that's where we're all excelling to, is to get into our zone of genius where we excel easily and effortlessly and creating that team. And so for the entrepreneur moms that are out there, I think the biggest thing I would say is like, get yourself a team.
Yeah.
Get yourself a team.
Yeah. And when you one as the client are fully supported, you're able to stay in that zone of genius, right? And then even trickling down to our assistants or Jennifer's role, she's fully supported, which allows her to stay in that, right? She's not worried about, is my client going to pay? I haven't sent them that. She's able to go, I log on and I do this for Nicole and this is what I excel at. And that's it. Yeah. And that's really what we wanted to create for clients and our assistants. Because we are very big into that. And we will have clients go, no, I only want one girl and I want her to be a bookkeeper and a social media manager. And we're like, that is never going to work. Because you cannot have those different many skill sets and talents, and that is switching your brain to another level by becoming a bookkeeper and a social media manager. It's a lot. In social media. No one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
yeah, it's one of those things, but I will say that it's a mindset in terms of, as an entrepreneur myself, I've been in it for 7 years now, and I wasn't born an entrepreneur. I definitely have done an incredible amount of work around changing my neurology and changing the way I think, and my value systems have changed, and it didn't happen overnight. And if there's anything I would tell my younger self, would have been to get a team early on, because I think there's this transition of like just funds and kind of, doing things. But yeah, I would say if I were to start today, it would have been to get a team or earlier on, so that I could stay in my lane and I could stay in that genius. And I'm grateful for where I'm at right now, but it is a mindset to go, okay, so I'm going to pay someone to help me and it's like, yeah, but watch yourself rise. Watch yourself rise.
Yeah, it is the real chicken and the egg. And especially like you said, monetarily, sometimes it's hard to wrap your mind around, I'm going to pay someone X when I'm barely making X. It's like, right, but if you pay them X, you're going to make X times 10. Because now you do this. And
Yes.
so switching that mindset is very hard. And we will see clients come in and want to build out their whole team immediately. And we'll say, you know, like, let's start with one role. Let's start with one role that gets you back to doing revenue generating tasks, and let's build from there. Right. And you're kind of feeling that now, even talking, you know, today about adding additional services, right? It's like, okay, I'm doing this. Now I can go to this. But yeah, it is. And entrepreneurs are control freaks. Like we all are.
Yeah. I know.
We're all doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is that shift of around my mindset around, okay, so I've got to let control over things, and it's got to be like this. And I personally love it, but I will say that right now I'm in that transition of just trying to figure out what that schedule looks like and when to get things done. And so we're like in such a good groove. Why I think it's so important to have this conversation is because a year ago I had decided, like, what is my vision? I remember looking around going, oh my gosh, everything that I dreamed about, my goals, my vision, I've achieved it. So what is the next level? What's the next space? And I'm talking all areas of life, right? Like where's the expansion? And if you look in the book, it was like this vision, and it took a while to crack because I think there's a lot of fear getting in the way. But it was to build a team, because I knew I was at the capacity, and there's things I don't know, but there's things I want to continue. I love doing podcasts, and I love doing one-to-one work, and I love doing group work. Anything else, I'm like, I don't need to do it anymore, but I want to, you know, leave. So COVID has had a funny way of really pushing me through that and getting me fully online in those areas, and really kind of pushing me through that side. But I have to say, the mentality around building a team and what that means for me, it just supports more of alignment and staying true to what is important to me, which is being with my family and having an impactful practice and business. And so I'm just so grateful for you and what you have set up and designed, because it's allowing me to live out that vision, right?
Yeah. Well, and I love that you can even just see the way you're talking about it is like, do those things that make you light up that way, personally and professionally, right? And make those a priority, and delegate the rest.
Yeah.
Because guess what? There is someone who lights up about bookkeeping.
Totally.
And that's what we want to do. So,
yeah. Oh my gosh, I agree. I so agree. There's been so many beautiful nuggets you have said in here. I'm going to go back to the island of misfits. So you had said, you know, feeling like you're a misfit, you know, not this and you're not that. So what would you say has helped you move through that, or what have you found to really create a connection or a sense of belonging? Or is that something you're still navigating through? I mean, I think it's kind of what we're always navigating, but.
Yeah. Well, this is where being an Enneagram 8 helps, because we typically have I don't really care attitude. There is the element of just like, it is what it is. So, but for me to have those relationships, I think there is an element that I think they're not going to understand, and that's okay, because you know what? I don't understand their world. I couldn't do that. So it's no different of me holding that against them. So I try to meet everybody where they're at. I'm obviously not going to go into a mom's play date and let them know what my P&L projections are, right?
Totally.
That's not that's a conversation.
They're not telling us what it is, so why would they?
Exactly.
Why would we?
So, and I think keeping that in check and not trying to force that on them on both sides, right? I'm not going to walk into a boardroom of men and try to let them know that I'm potty training, right? Like it's not appropriate. And so that helps me navigate it. But at the end of the day, there is this feeling of like those connections, like even when I do these podcasts, you get it, right? So these are easy conversations, you know what I'm talking about. And so I think there's just always, which can apply to all groups of people, right? There's always going to be people that, you know, but in the mom world, it's just can sometimes be prevalent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think community, I was on a training this morning, and they were asking, you know, what would you tell your newbie self as an entrepreneur? And I have actually been with this, with Avalon since I started. And I would say that it was the community. I mean, there's been so many tremendous things I've done along the way, but I look at what has been consistent, and has been the community aspect, staying within a community of like-minded people who naturally are on that same path. and again, doesn't take away from the people that are already in my life, but just having that sense of belonging, that what I am going through and navigating, I'm not doing it alone, and I'm not questioning whether or not, like, I mean, I know with the first few months of postpartum, I was like, yeah, I'm doing everything wrong. That, I think that was just my initiation into motherhood. So that's fine. But even still, finding groups and stuff like that with people who were doing similar things just creates, and I think it's Tony Robbins that says we have these 6 basic needs as a human, and one of them being that sense of belonging. And I would say community is the absolute most important, which is why the podcast is so important for me, to build a community of women who are along that journey and looking for, like, they're not alone in this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's times that even with the women that work with us, we're having to, you know, kind of mama bear them at times, and like, you don't need to take this on. Like, you've told me how you haven't seen your husband in a month because you've been so stressed. Like, I'm sending you a gift card. You're going on a date. Like, I mean, because we get it, because we've been there. And so having them to talk to and work through that can kind of serve as, you know, cathartic therapy for yourself as well. You know, anytime you're giving advice that you know should apply to yourself.
Yeah. When you hear it coming out, you're like, oh, wait, am I doing that as well? Yeah. Well, what I love about what you've created as well is the, when it comes to motherhood, creating that village and that, you know, the helping vibe within our environment has been key. And so it should, not should, I don't really like using that word, but it's important that it is duplicated in the world of entrepreneurship. And so that's what I'm really grateful for, and for you coming on today and kind of expanding that, because I didn't know about this. I didn't know, it wasn't in my radar. And I hope that whoever's listening today grabs that idea that whatever they're doing really well, they can duplicate that in another area of their life. And there doesn't need to be shame or guilt or judgment around it. It's just, it is, I look at it as like, it's an opportunity to rise and to grow. So of course, you know, so I really, really love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you could tell, because we're focusing on entrepreneurship and motherhood, if you could tell I know you said it was about 4 years ago that you made that transition. So what would it be? What would you tell yourself at that point? Something you've learned now, you would want your younger self to know then.
Yeah. The immediate word that comes to mind is like settle down is what I mean. And I've told this before, but when I first started, again, being an 8, I'm like full throttle into anything I do. It's real all or nothing mentality. But I knew I couldn't keep that up. I come from a long line of alcoholics. And I told my husband, I said, I need just 1 year of letting me just go full on Nicole in this business. Like, we're going to be eating out. The house isn't going to be clean. Like, I just need that year. And I did that, but I knew I had to like pump the brakes at some point, because that wasn't sustainable, and certainly not sustainable for my personal goals. But I would say now I'm to a point where I know, like, every email, every phone call, it's not going to be the end of the world. It feels that way when you literally have no money and you're grasping at clients and trying to build your business. But everything will not explode overnight. And continued with that theme of just, you know, settle or chill, I should say, is don't go too high with the highs and don't go too low with the lows. Like, stay here. You're going to have awesome testimonials and clients that love you and they can never leave you. And you're going to have the worst things said about you. And you just have to go, I know what I'm doing. I know our purpose. I know our standards. So here I am. So I guess chill, settle, calm down. Described about me in general. So
yeah, I love that. I think that is absolutely true, and also so true in motherhood too. Like,
100%. Yeah.
Right? Like those tantrums that the little 2-year-old can get in, gosh, they can just pull you in and just like, is there anything that I am doing right now?
Yes,
and then they have those moments where you're like, oh my God, I only had to say it once, and you're like totally listening. So this is wild. So
in reality, you're leaders on both fronts. And I always say, like, I used to go into my kids' schools and I would find the PTA moms, the room moms, the ones that are organizing, and that's who I would recruit to come work for me. Because they're just running the same thing. They're running a business at school. So kind of how you are as an entrepreneur is what you naturally kind of translate to as a mom, whether it's being hyper organized or, you know.
Oh, true.
So I'm always like, yeah, give me a PTA mom any day. Because guess what? That's more drama and more work than any workplace I've ever been in.
I love that. I have to say that's so true. Like my whole passion is mental emotional health and, you know, spirit health and emotional intelligence. And I look at my parenting, I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of work. I'm like, and almost sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, you gotta pull back. You know, my partner's really good at being like, okay, just like, come on over here, right? And I'm like, yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, that is so true. So thank you so much. So I would love for you to tell our listeners if they want to find more out about you or what you offer. Can you kind of like just tell us how the process even, like how to even begin the process if they're an entrepreneur? And if there's a mom that's looking to kind of take on a few hours, like what does it all look like?
Yeah, so both sides can actually go to our website, which is just bosunsolutions.com. If you're looking to be an assistant, you can actually go to join our remote team. And it's all our different kind of operational roles we support. And if you are actually looking to use our services, you're able to fill out a form on there. And from there, we actually schedule a strategy call, which is typically done with my business partner, Liz. And so she is the one that actually really walks through your needs, talks about your processes, goes over how our system works. So pretty simple steps, honestly, but just, yeah, if you want to go to bosunsolutions.com, that's where we're at.
Amazing. Amazing.
Okay, so yeah, and we also wanted to offer to your listeners, if they do sign up through the website and they let us know that they heard us on Redefine and Align, we will be giving off 50% off the onboarding fee.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll also make sure that I put that in the show notes for sure, but that is so amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think that is like for an entrepreneurial mom, I think receiving help in the business is like so key. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us, Nicole. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a wonderful day, love.